In the middle of the Pacific War, when steel ruled the oceans and aircraft ruled the sky, something appeared that made Japanese sailors whisper a new name into their radios. It wasn't a battleship. It wasn't a submarine. It wasn't even supposed to exist. It was small. It was fast, and it carried the nose of a fighter plane, bolted onto a wooden boat. When Japanese patrols first encountered it, they didn't know what to call it. It didn't behave like a normal boat. It didn't fight like a normal weapon. So they gave it a name that spread through the fleet like a curse. Devil boats. And once those boats arrived, the night itself stopped being safe. By 1942, the Pacific Ocean had become the most brutal battlefield on Earth. The Japanese Empire controlled vast stretches of island chains. Their supply convoys moved at night, hugging coastlines, believing darkness was protection. America needed a way to strike fast, hard, and disappear before retaliation arrived. Big ships were too slow. Aircraft needed airfields. Submarines couldn't chase shallow coastal routes, so engineers were given a dangerous order. Build something small, but deadly. What followed was not elegance. It was not tradition. It was raw, wartime improvisation, weapon without a home. The Bell P-39 Airacobra was a strange aircraft. Unlike most fighters, its engine sat behind the pilot. Its nose wasn't filled with machinery. Instead, it held something terrifying. A 37mm cannon. That cannon could rip aircraft apart. It could punch through armor. It could turn a truck, a bunker, or a boat into scrap metal. But in air combat, the P-39 struggled at high altitude. Many pilots disliked it. Some units quietly pushed it aside. Yet one engineer stared at that cannon and thought, what if this weapon doesn't belong in the sky at all? Someone suggested something outrageous. Put the P-39's nose on a boat. Not a ship, not a destroyer. A tiny patrol boat. At first it sounded insane, but desperation removes fear. The cannon was removed from damaged or unused aircraft. The nose section was reinforced, and it was mounted on fast, shallow draft boats. No armor, no luxury, just speed, surprise, and a cannon designed for warplanes. The result was a monster. The boats were small enough to hide behind islands, fast enough to outrun most patrol craft, and armed with a gun that should never have been there. At night, they crept close to Japanese supply routes. Engines low, lights off. Japanese sailors would hear a sound they couldn't identify. Then, boom, a single 37mm shell slammed into a transport boat. Fuel ignited. Wood exploded. Men vanished into fire and water. Before anyone could respond, the boat was gone. Japanese reports began describing something unnatural. These attackers appeared suddenly, fired with aircraft-level firepower, vanished before counterfire. They weren't destroyers. They weren't submarines. They were something new, something wrong. That's when the name spread. Akuma no Fune. Devil boats. Some sailors refused night patrols. Others fired blindly into darkness. But the devil boats didn't fight fair. They never stayed. The genius of the devil boats wasn't strength. It was timing. They attacked. Fuel barges, troop transports, ammo boats, landing craft. One shell could cripple an entire convoy. And the psychological damage was worse than the physical. Japanese commanders were forced to add escorts, slow convoys, reroute supplies, all because of boats that weren't even supposed to exist. The crews knew the risk. One hit could tear the boat apart. There was no armor to save them. No medical bay, no backup. But they also knew something else. They were feared. And fear was a weapon. Veterans later said the silence before firing was worse than combat. Just water, darkness, and the knowledge that once they fired, everyone would know where they were. So they fired once and ran. The devil boats weren't perfect. They couldn't fight destroyers head-on. They couldn't survive daylight air attacks. And as radar improved, surprise became harder. But by then, their job was done. They forced the enemy to adapt. They broke routines. They turned the night into a battlefield. And in war, changing how the enemy thinks is often more powerful than destroying ship. There were no parades for the devil boats. No famous aces. No dramatic photos. They were ugly, improvised, temporary. But that's often how the most effective weapons are. They existed just long enough to matter, then disappeared. The devil boats remind us of something uncomfortable. Victory isn't always about bigger machines, or perfect designs, or honorable fights. Sometimes victory comes from desperation, from imagination, from taking a weapon built for the sky and bolting it onto the sea. And when your enemy starts naming your invention after demons, you know you've already won something far greater than a battle. You've won their fear.